Now, when Gillian said, could I do this, I said, well, is this a theoretical thing or is it a practical thing? I'm basically a practical person. I spend a lot of time managing projects. And I think that it's a half and half question, that practice is about what you do and how you work, but we also recognize that you start work with a set of values in mind. And our organization is basically following a kind of rights-based approach. I must say that's a very kind of trendy term now, but when I started doing this, it wasn't at all trendy. And working through rights was a slightly different way. But basically what we're arguing is that human rights underpin our whole objective, and they are about the objective of development. If you want to address poverty, then this is about addressing human rights. And we're concerned not just with civil and political rights, but also with economic and social rights. I suppose the other kind of theme underlying our work is also about governance, and it's about the promotion of the legitimate role of civil society and about improving the relationship between government and civil society. And that's about recognizing that NGOs have a legitimate and crucial role in service delivery, but also in promoting good governance and in advocating for rights. So they're legitimate organizations in terms of advocacy. And advocacy, if you like, is one of the key features of all our projects. So speaking up for the protection of the vulnerable, for the improvement of accountability and transparency of government. And I suppose what we try to say is that these kinds of values, if you like, should also appear in our practical things, in the practical ways in which we work. So I think these are important values because they underpin a long-term approach to development. If you're talking about governance, if you're talking about rights, if you're talking about advocacy, this is about working from the small, the project, to the larger, using a project to advocate change in the long term. So not just for the here and now, but for long-term changes that may have a broader impact on larger sections of society than the small group with whom you have the project. I think also in good governance, of course, you're arguing and focusing very much on the obligations of the duty bearers, i.e. calling governments to account for delivering on human rights. So what have I learned about good practice from 20-odd years of work in sub-Saharan Africa, but also some parts of Asia, but also in countries of former Eastern Europe? Okay, I've got 1 minute. And I'm going to focus very quickly on the practical, but just to say to you that learning has very much been about getting things wrong as getting things right. First of all, I think good partnership working is crucial. We work in partnership with other NGOs, largely. And clarity of objectives and shared commitment to goals, I think, underpin that, and that's something that Roy mentioned as well. Sorry, yes, it was Roy, yes. Shared understanding about how a project has to be carried out, and with this, recognizing the skills and experience of the contributing partners, so supporting one another. And this underlines the importance of sharing the design of the project so that it fits local circumstances, it addresses local needs, that it isn't a kind of bolt-on from above. Clear understanding of the different roles and responsibilities. People talk about MOUs. I think they're the icing on the cake. You have to actually have that agreement about different roles and responsibilities and who will do what. And transparency in dealing with budgets and sharing funders' rules and regulations and making sure that these are understood by all. Good communications to build trust and respect between partners as well. I think capacity building in country is also key to knowing that you've been effective. Development should lead to long-term improvement, and that means investing in people and training. Taking slower routes, adapting systems, not imposing. And local ownership and responsibility for a work or a project comes from empowering rather than controlling. So when we talk about managing projects, I think this is about, you have to think carefully about what you're trying to do through management. Monitoring and evaluation, also crucial because it is about learning. It's about understanding whether or not you need to change what it is that you're doing to adapt. So monitoring, crucial in terms of seeing how you're going, understanding about whether you've got to change. And it has to be participatory. It's something that all the people involved in a project or a piece of development work should be participating in, rather than something that is just an imposition. And I've added on at the end here, paperwork has to be simple and accessible, It's difficult. We're trying to evaluate things like empowerment, things like advocacy, extremely difficult indeed. But you can do it, but you've got to make it possible to do as well.